So I want to talk about something that is kind of important to me. It's not so much a news item as it is something that happens, and I think more people need to be aware of who might not know. So for those of you who had a religious upbringing, I'm fairly certain that most of you, if you grew up in a Christian household, for instance, might have had the adage given to you, no sex before marriage, right? Like that's a common thing that a lot of us had to deal with in religious households, and some of us might even still have that particular idea in mind. Just saving yourself for marriage. It's a very cultural touchstone of the United States now, because we are a culturally Christian nation, so we kind of get stuck in that particular brand of religiosity no matter what. I personally find the idea really dumb. There are some people who are sexually incompatible, and therefore getting in a relationship with each other can be a bit of a problem. As an example, you might have somebody who is a lesbian and doesn't realize they're a lesbian because they've had no cultural reinforcement to basically help them gauge whether or not that's their sexuality. And so they get with a man and then they get married so that they can have sex, probably a little earlier than they originally wanted to. And then after having sex a few times, they realize something's off and something's wrong. And then over time, they start realizing that maybe they weren't bisexual, maybe they weren't pansexual, maybe they were just lesbians. And then suddenly there's a relationship where there's an awful lot of love and not a whole lot of function in the bedroom anymore. This is a thing that happens in a lot of scenarios, but it happens more often in scenarios where people are forced to not engage and learn these things before marriage. So what happens when you have a society that is forced to engage legally in this practice? It's one thing to have it culturally reinforced, right? Like, if your parents say don't have sex before marriage, chances are you're still gonna go and do the thing with someone. Like, you're an adult, they're an adult, or hell, even if you two were teenagers, you've probably gone and snagged a condom and done something with your partner, assuming that that's something that you needed for that. But when it's legally reinforced, you get something kind of like the topic of today's video. This one comes from Raj. Raj is the used to be my editor and is now the one who is in charge of taking care of YouTube shorts for the most part. But this one, some of you might have heard about this idea before, but the idea that there's something called a pleasure marriage or a short form marriage, and it creates a huge problem. You can read the words on screen right now to see some of the problems that come up as a result of that. Just a few. Let's go ahead and read the article. Again, this is not a new thing, but this is something that I wanted to talk about because there are so many people who have the idea that it would be better if the United States were to become a religious theocracy. And I just kind of want to show this is one of the things that happens when you start moving towards the angles of theocracy. This is what happens in other countries when you start allowing for that. And never pretend that your religion is so pure that this wouldn't happen as a result of that. But let's go ahead and get into the article. It says, I'm walking through a security cordon that leads into Kadamia, one of Shia Islam's holiest sites. I'm in a queue along with dozens of pilgrims who have come from all over the world to pay their respects to the shrine of Imam Kadim. At the gate, a female security guard pats me down and looks into my handbag. A reminder that the story I'm reporting on here isn't going to be easy. As I walk around the market stalls surrounding the shrine, I notice the many marriage offices dotted around the mosque, which are licensed to perform Sharia marriages. I've received tips that some clerics here were performing short-term pleasure marriages, or muta. This was a practice that was illegal under Iraqi law, whereby men can pay for a temporary wife with the officiating cleric receiving a cut. So, what does that basically mean? Well, when you have a legally enforced way of saying, hey, your marriage needs to be, like, you can't have sex before marriage, so your marriage needs to be a thing that happens first. So people will have a short-term marriage, they will go do the fuck, and then the marriage will dissolve. It'll be like a 2-hour thing. Your marriage dissolves in 2 hours, or, you know, for some people, I guess the marriage might dissolve in 5 minutes. It really depends. I'm sorry, the people who engage in this, probably closer to a minute, let's be honest. But, it says here, I was told behind closed doors, many of these clerics were using and abusing Sharia marriage laws to exploit women for profit. These men were grooming vulnerable girls and young women, trapping them into prostitution, and pimping them out, all with seemingly total impunity. For such a story, we needed to secure evidence on camera. We recruited a male undercover reporter who, over the course of our year-long investigation, met and secretly filmed several of the clerics running the Sharia marriage offices in the vicinity of the shrines. Meanwhile, I met and interviewed the clerics' female victims, as well as some of the male clients who routinely used pleasure marriages. So this is, it's religious pimping. Like, that's really what it is. It's religious pimping. Predator marriage rings. Yeah, that's kind of what this is. This is what happens when you have theocracy basically blanketing everything in your nation. When you do that, you end up creating a world where people will mask anything that they're doing behind religion. You want to do the Spanish Inquisition? Okay, just make sure that your religion is the head of it. You want to genocide a people? Make sure that religion is the head of it. You want to make sure that people are able to engage in prostitution, like child prostitution? As long as religion is ahead of it, then who is going to complain? Who's going to speak out against it? If your nation is theocratic, then as far as anybody's concerned, your government and your God are one and the same. And if you can't question your God, now you can't really question your government very well. So when your government does something awful, you're kind of powerless to do anything against it. Like, in the United States, we at least have electoralism, right? If we don't like something a politician is doing, we have the ability to vote them out. As ineffective as that might be sometimes, it is still the ability to do something about it. We are allowed to speak out about it. We are allowed to engage in public forums and say, hey, this is something that I do not like. This is something that I would prefer not to be there. This isn't to say the U.S. is the best in the world. This is just to juxtapose a measure of freedom that we have versus what we could have. It says, first, our undercover reporter approached a number of clerics with marriage offices near the shrine in Baghdad to gauge how many were willing to perform muta ceremonies. Out of 10 clerics, 8 agreed to arrange a pleasure marriage for our reporter. He said, you can marry a girl for half an hour, and as soon as it's over, you can marry another. One of the clerics, Sayed Rad, told our reporter on camera, even after half an hour, you can marry another. So people could literally just, every single time their willy is ready to go, they could just marry another girl and another girl and another girl and another girl. And this sounds like they're not just marrying their girlfriend temporarily so that they can have sex real quick and then be done. The clerics have literal women ready to go. Like, they are selling this, but they are selling it in religious flavor. And it also sounds like some of these women are underage. Not women, but girls. It says, we caught on camera evidence supporting some of the victims' claims that clerics often conspired with their male clients to deceive women. Oh, Jesus. In a Kadamia marriage office, a reporter posing as a visiting businessman was advised by the cleric to use deception when planning a pleasure marriage. It said, take my advice. Don't tell her where my offices are in Kadamia, so afterwards she can't come looking for her rights. Trust me, it's better that way. So, for all the Matt Walshes in the world that deem themselves theocratic fascists, this is kind of the world that you're going for. Just saying. If people feel like they need a shower right now, I wholly understand. Said that they found that teenage girls were particularly vulnerable to predatory men assisted by the clerics. often paying the heaviest prices for their misfortune. In Iraq, for a young girl to lose her virginity outside of marriage, it is widely seen as a scandal. Also, for those who were trying to redeem anything during the stream, did make a note earlier in the stream that policy going forward is that redeems are going to be for when we are not in the middle of topics, when topics are over, and before topics. Because I want to make sure that people who are coming into the stream and or watching the videos on YouTube and are not here for the VTuber culture shenanigans that we've cultivated here are not alienated by that. Also, just saying, for gross topics like this is also one of the exact reasons why I'm stopping the redeems during things. Said pin a comment. So, I am in a restream right now, so that's not a thing I can do. Nor am I stopping myself any longer. I'm going to continue with the topic now. But, it said in Katamaya, Syed Rad offered to officiate a pleasure marriage between our reporter and a young virgin. He advised him not to take her virginity during their time together, adding that anal sex is permitted. Guy said, if I do take her virginity, God forbid, what do I do? And our reporter said, do her family know where you live? Said, then you could just leave if the family don't know where you live. So, bring women to the cleric, tell them that you're going to fuck them in the butt, and then you go? This all feels really scummy. Not gonna lie. Watching the secret footage was difficult, especially as I was interviewing many young women who were living with the consequences of the cleric's actions. One of them was just 14, Jesus Christ, when an older man started following her home from school. He told me he was rich, that he loved my personality, and that I was beautiful. A few weeks later, the man introduced me to a cleric and pressed her to enter into a pleasure marriage. I informed the cleric that I was a virgin. Mona told me, but the cleric didn't ask for her parents' consent, as is the custom in Iraq, saying it wasn't needed as both she and the man were adults. I'm just going to go and say this right now. 14-year-old is not an adult. I'm sorry. 14-year-old is not an adult. That is infinitely far enough away from the age in which your brain is done developing. Even 18 is an arbitrary number that was picked, but it is a number that we needed to have on file as opposed to something later. Scummy is putting it mildly. Yeah, no, this is gross. Now, 17, she is under pressure from her family to marry, but is terrified her future husband will find out she's no longer a virgin. So, I'm going to pause the reading real quick to also point out that this is something else that happens when you push for theocracy. There are people who want to make this kind of thought, this kind of terrified thought about sex, this kind of fear to be normalized. They want everybody to be afraid of what sex with anybody is like if you are not a virgin. The only sex they want is like you are with your husband for the first time, you are a virgin, he takes your virginity, and then you guys ride off into the sunset, and if he ends up being abusive, fuck, it doesn't matter. These are the types of people who think that divorce is bad, these are the types of people who think that premarital sex is bad. This is what happens in a world with those kinds of thoughts. People start freaking out about, oh my god, he might find out that I've had sex once. I'm going to let you know right now, the older you get, the less you care about the virginity of a person. And if you're, say, 30 years old, like I am, and you care about whether or not your partner is a virgin, then I'm going to be honest, at a certain point, that's just fucking gross. I'm sorry. The only types of people who desperately want that kind of inexperience are predatory. As somebody who has been with people for their first time, and as somebody who has been with people for their 1000th time, virginity is just a thing we have made up, and it is not a gold standard in any way, shape, or form. Her uncle, she tells me, killed her cousin merely for having a boy. Her uncle killed her cousin for having a boyfriend, and now she is thinking about suicide. She says, I have no way out. If I feel more pressure, I will do it. Honor killings. Yeah, this is the honor killing thing. So for those who don't know, in some countries that are ran by Islam, that are ran theocratically, this right here, this is what you get. You get, oh my god, my daughter is not a virgin anymore. I have to preserve her honor. I'm going to shoot her. Trini says, don't say sorry, just be honest. People who care about virginity at 30 is just literal pedo at that point. No, because if somebody wants like a 25-year-old virgin, that's not pedophilia. That's not the word I would use for it. But I would say that it sounds a little predatory. Just a little bit. Like if you're specifically wanting somebody with inexperience. Says, the investigation took me to Karbala, Shia Islam's holiest site. An important part of our investigation was to establish the role of the holy city's religious authorities in all of this, particularly whether they condoned the practice of pleasure marriages. At the main marriage office, I spoke to Sheikh Imad al-Asadi, who insisted that the practice was illegal, very illegal, and yet they still do it. But around the corner from the office, we found another cleric who was willing to officiate a pleasure marriage to a child, including giving her explicit instructions on how to sexually abuse children without getting caught. This is one of those things where you can tell that it's illegal on the books, but practiced by everybody. It's just like narcotics officers who will do a drug bust, and then they will just start using all of the drugs they found. Like, they'll just start using all the drugs they found. Like, any of the illegal paraphernalia, they're just like, yeah, no, we confiscated it. It's ours. It's off the street now. We're all going to get really high. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The cleric was clearly not the only one taking part in such abuses. Another one of the women I spoke to, Reem, accused prominent clerics of being involved in pimping and pleasure marriages. After Reem's husband was killed by an ISIS bomb in 2016, she and her 2 children became homeless. Reem said that when she approached a well-known cleric for alms, he had sex with her and then pimped her out to his friends. Reem doesn't name the cleric, but she describes him as powerful and well-known in her community. I repeat again, when you want theocratic anything, this is what you get. People who have authority that can be stripped away from them by people voting them out, that's a good thing. When people feel like their authority can never be taken away because it is basically given to them by God, this is what you get. This is the end result of that. You will have nothing but this literally everywhere. And unfortunately, if you look back to the history of a lot of the Middle Eastern countries in these regions, theocratic Islam taking over, it created this problem. Like, it literally created this problem. Look at pictures from 30 or 40 years ago from Iraq and Afghanistan and Iran. Look at pictures from ages ago when women were allowed to drive and go to college. It damn near looks like America. People are dressed like Americans almost. Like, it just looks like older pictures here. You don't start seeing strict adherence to the to burqa, strict adherence to basically any type of forced dress code that happens in Islam until they started taking over. Not just like culturally Islamic like you have in some countries, not the way we have cultural Christianity here in the States, or it's when you literally start going, hey, our government is based entirely on the teachings of the Quran. That's what you get. Said he proposed said Reem said when she approached a well-known cleric for alms, blah, 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 blah. He proposed a pleasure marriage with me, and I had to do it to survive. They would have sex once or twice a week in his office, and then he began bringing his friends, including one who Reem says was famous in his region. He forced me to go into a room with his friend. Reem then found out the cleric was charging his associates $300 or $400 to have sex with her, while she was paid just pocket money. They're literally just pimps. They're literally just pimps. She said they were like animals. They have sex with a woman and then throw her away. So, but how are clerics able to get away with breaking the law so blatantly? The strength of the Shia religious establishment, backed by the intimidatory weight of the Shia militias, appears to have given the Shia clerics a sense of total impunity. Our investigation has found many of the clerics enjoyed powerful political connections. One of them, Karbala-based Saya Salawi, boasted to our reporter that he was attached to a Shia militia, a claim which is given credence by photographic evidence we have found on social media. So there's another word for these types of militias that will patrol around and basically enforce the will of an imam or a cleric. There are, purity police that will go around and do this kind of shit. It's a disgusting practice, but it's one of the reasons why it's important as people who are progressive and, say, who are atheists like I am. There's a fine line between supporting Muslims, who are often the actual victims of Islam, and then straight up just supporting anything Islam wants to do. You have to be careful when you are trying to argue in favor of this kind of, not this kind of stuff, but when you were trying to argue in favor of people not being discriminated against for being Muslim. Like, think about the people who were discriminated against in the United States after the 9/11 attacks. People were tossed out of jobs, were ridiculed, were sometimes beat in the street, literally for just being Muslim. You want to be able to support those people, as they are victims of one system or another, but you also have to make sure to remember that if that particular religion were to gain a foothold in power, it's not going to be a, progressive time, and it's not going to be a happy time for anybody. It's going to be this. This is what you get. Just like how it's fine to point out that, hey, oftentimes people who are Christians are the victims of Christian bigotry and their, xenophobia. But you don't want theocratic Christianity taking over in the United States. Same idea. So the BBC later approached the clerics for their response. Sayyarad denied he performed Muta marriages. The others did not respond, and Sayyarad had said that he was a follower of Grand Ayatollah Allah Sistani, Iraq's most influential Shia cleric. The BBC approached Ayatollah Sistani's office in the holy city of Najaf with the reporter's evidence and asked him to clarify his stance on Muta marriages. He said, if these practices are happening in the way that you are saying, then we condemn them unreservedly. Temporary marriage is not allowed as a tool to sell sex in a way that belittles the dignity and humanity of women. A guardian of a girl should not permit her marriage without her consent, and she is supposed to marry if it is she's not supposed to marry if it is against the law, which could bring troubles to her. Yeah, so this is basically what you would expect anybody to say in this situation. Anybody who is in power, who can have that power stripped from them or questioned or could lose anything, this is what they would have as a canned response. Just like anybody who is in a prison cell might say that they didn't murder 15 people, even if they did. People saying that they did not do stuff is not enough evidence that they did not do stuff. Like some other Shia leaders in Iraq, the 89-year-old Ayatollah Sistani has previously, in a book published 25 years ago titled The Path of the Righteous, written that if a child under 9 were promised in marriage or temporary marriage, sexual touching was religiously permitted. 9 years old? That's what you're going with? They're okay with 9 years old. Why? If there are any Shia Muslims in my audience, can you contextualize this for me? I understand the whole, Muhammad married Aisha, and Aisha was 6, and then at 9, when she had her period, that was when they consummated their marriage finally. That's part of Muslim lore. I'm just going to say that doesn't make it okay. That doesn't make it all right. Brisk Creek says Muhammad married a 6-year-old. Right? Yeah, Aisha was 6 years old when Muhammad married her in lore, and then waited until the ripe old age of 9 years old to do stuff. There's even hadiths that talk about because the Quran was supposed to be given verbally. It's one of the reasons why the Quran has passages in it that are considered irrelevant based on any later passage that contradicts that passage. A lot of that comes down to the fact that the Quran was dictated orally, just off the head. But there was a story, I can't remember what it was in a hadith, I believe, where you had Muhammad lying in Aisha's lap as she was on her period, and there was some imagery about the blood leaking into his ear as he was dictating. Krowlith is having a hell of a time out there. It was a very weird story, and I don't remember the context of it, but if somebody is more knowledgeable on this front, then maybe they could contextualize that a bit for me. This investigation showed the hardships in post-conflict Iraq, and with the rise of the Shia religious conservative establishment, have turned the clock back on women's rights. Secular laws designed to protect women and children have been part of the Iraqi legal system for decades, but they have been rendered meaningless in the face of continuous flouting by powerful men backed by the country and political establishment. Meanwhile, a whole generation of young girls and women are paying a devastating price. As Reem put it, describing the clerics who abused her. They eat the flesh and then throw away the bones. And that is a gross and disgusting way to think about it, but it's true. These are... So, a lot of people who follow these particular, very, very outdated laws and customs, they have the idea, and hell, there's a lot of Christians in our society right now that have this idea that if a woman has had sex, they are now used goods. They're basically chewing gum that has been chewed and spat out. This idea is not only gross, but it's incorrect. If you've ever been with a person, like if you've... What's the best way to put this? Having sex with somebody who has had sex with over 100 partners, and having sex with somebody who's had sex with 3 partners, and having sex with somebody who's a virgin and has only had sex with you, so they're not a virgin, they've only had sex with you, there is no difference. There is no difference between these things except for experience, and somebody can get a lot of experience being with one person or a lot of experience being with 100 people. It does not matter. It is the same thing either way. There is no difference in personality. There is no difference in how much a person can love you. The only thing that they gain in that scenario is perspective. And if you're so concerned about all the people that she might have slept with, remember, she is with you right now. Whoever you are with, they are with you right now. They are choosing to be with you. In fact, if somebody's been with multiple partners, it's probably even better that they are with you right now, because if they are choosing to be with you, they know what a life is like with other types of people, and they have chosen, instead of being with them, to be with you. And that matters a whole lot more than if somebody chose you and had never had any experience with anybody before and has never known what it's like to be with somebody else. If the only perspective they have is that one person, then they don't really have a good perspective on whether or not the relationship with you is as healthy as they might think it is. Certain toxic behaviors that you might have, they might just get desensitized to, and they have no context for, oh, that's actually a bad behavior. That's actually an abusive behavior. Brutus says, being someone's first in a heterosexual situation is a lot of starting and stopping. Well, yes, that's why I didn't say that's why I corrected myself from a virgin to somebody who is in a relationship with you and has only been in a relationship with you. There's no difference between them having sex with you 100 times and having sex with 100 people and then having sex with you. Like that 101st time, it is just sex at that point. It's fine. And anybody said the best way to end that, yeah, the best way to end this entire thing is pointing out women are not chewed gum. And any religion or any law that tries to promote the idea that women are chewed gum, that need to be discarded after a certain point, is disgusting. And it's very, very telling that as the Shia sect of Islam took over the region, women's rights got dialed back damn near 100 years. This is one of the reasons you don't want a theocracy. Because even Christianity taking over would dial women's rights back the exact same way. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. I know this is a grosser topic, but I still want to know y'all's opinions down there. And as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey there, thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you were here for the last stream, you know why my brain's a bit frazzled. It got kind of ping-pong balled around. Anyway, we got fan art to talk about. You made it to the end of the video, which means we get to relax here doing this part instead of dealing with the woes of every other piece of garbage on the internet. So, that said, let's go ahead and talk about this piece of fan art because it is adorable. This is from Indie Pines. Says, thank you for getting me back into and reminding me of my love of animating. I made the... Oh my god, they're escaping! It is... God, this is so fluid. I want to use this for something, but it's not art that I've commissioned, so I don't feel comfy doing that. But like this is really fucking cool. The next one we have here is from Nox Lupus. Says, hi, I love the fact that you encourage fan art, and I wanted to participate. Never had an affinity for visual art, but I do a lot of creative writing, so I thought maybe I'd represent the literary arts with a haiku at 12:40 a.m. Man, I'm bad at words. So here it is. Enjoy the Neko Slime haiku. The Neko Slime haiku. Oh, woe in your heart, Ara Ara brings the dark. Redacted for neck coins. Fair, I suppose. The last one we have here is from Isaac. Slime Boy made him goopy. No. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. I'm gonna go back and just watch this loop for a little bit. You can click off the video now. I mean, there's credits at the end, but like, I'm just doing this. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 nut patrons here, and they would be Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you. Sagitta, I'm not saying that part. And Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.